Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to see so many of my friends among you this evening. And I would like to begin this evening, first of all, by thanking Embry-Riddle University for hosting this event. This is the first in a series of 4 lectures on innovation. And I think of the 4, it will be the one of most general interest. Because tonight I'm going to give you an overview, as I see it at least, of the whole process of innovation from the moment of the first idea to the realization of the innovator's goals. This is so big I can't see it. Anyhow. I want to think along with you for a moment about innovation. It really drives the evolution of all man-made creations. Our social institutions, music, technology, medicine, law, anything you can think of that is created in the minds of man is a product of countless millennia of innovations built one upon the other to eventually arrive at where we are today, and we're in a great transition even today. So it's a wonderful thing to do and a wonderful thing to think about. To give you an idea of the appreciation, a little bit of appreciation for the simplest things in our lives, I've taken as an example a paper clip. You can't imagine anything much simpler than that. It's a bent steel wire piece that holds sheets of paper together. 9,000 years of innovation go into the building of this paper clip. And it's the many countless innovations, but all of them made by people just like you and me, who have, as individuals, come up with different ideas, new ways to do things. Here's an idea of what went into this simple paper clip. First of all, it's made of metal. And the working of metal was first begun about 9,000 years ago, 7,000 BC. Copper exists in a nugget form in our Earth, and people found those, probably some of them melted in a fire, and people started beating on them with stones and hammers, wooden hammers, and formed them into different devices. Copper smelting first occurred about 4,000 BC, 3,000 years later. Smelting is the reduction of the extraction of metal from the native ore. It was not until more than 1,000 years after that when metallurgy advanced enough for bronze. Bronze is an alloy of copper and tin, and it was found out that by alloying 2 soft metals together, it's possible to get a harder metal, one that would hold an edge, that you could make a sword and chop up your enemies. So that was the beginning of the Bronze Age, which we often hear about in our history. Now, much later than that, almost another 1,000 years after that, ironworking began. And much after that, steel began. Now, keep in mind, even back when copper smelting first took place, it wasn't just the finding of the copper and how to work it. It's inventing a furnace that would heat it up to 1900 degrees Fahrenheit and inventing all the tools that went along with it to be able to work that copper. Finally, paper clips aren't much good without paper. And paper was invented by in the Han Dynasty at 105 years AD. There was finally a method to draw steel into wire about 1,000 years ago. And for over 1,000 years after the discovery of paper, people held their papers together with ribbons and pins and various other methods. And I still remember some of them in the archives of libraries, finding sheaves of paper tied up neatly, particularly in Italy, with ribbons. Finally, at about 1899, the paperclip, as we know it, was invented, as was the machine to bend it into a paperclip. So I wanted to go through this exercise with you just to give you a little more appreciation about the simplest things in our lives and what has gone into making them. Of course, the same discussion practically would hold for anything made out of metal, because it's really the history of metallurgy that I'm talking about. Well, I want to discuss innovation and invention. And I start by discussing what I call a metaphorical cake. But suppose that a woman is wanting to give a special treat to an occasion for the garden club. And she looks through all the cake recipes that she can find and really can't find anything that really satisfies her. So she does some experimenting and comes up with her own cake recipe. So she has innovated. Now she bakes the cake and she serves it to the garden club and they rave about it. So she has realized the object of her innovation. She's succeeded at what she started out to do, and everybody's happy. But perhaps she has a little bit of an entrepreneurial bent to her, and she realizes she's got a really good recipe here, and what should she do with it? Well, I would say if she were also a university researcher, she would rush to publish that in a peer-reviewed article in a journal without giving a darn about protecting its intellectual property. But she probably isn't that. So she has some choices. A lot of times the women will just take the recipe. I'm not being sexist about this now, but the baker would just take the recipe and keep it for herself so she could be the only one in her circle of friends who could build that cake. Keeping that a secret is called a trade secret. As long as she doesn't divulge that to anybody, it's hers. And she can go on baking that cake forever, and nobody else can bake it because they can't figure out how it's made. Trade secrets are one way to protect one's innovations. It's a free method. You don't have to pay any attorney anything, or you just keep the secret to yourself. But you have to be very vigilant about keeping the secret. Otherwise, somebody else is going to bake your cake. There are very famous examples of trade secrets being commercialized. I think the most famous one is the recipe for Coca-Cola. They've never patented that. If Coca-Cola had patented that, no one else could have made that beverage for 20 years until the patent expired. By publishing the patent, they would have revealed the recipe, because that's what you do in a patent. And so they would have had 20 years of unfettered use of that, after which everybody else would know how to make it and could have. Or maybe the baker has had a little more expansive thoughts about her entrepreneurial bent, and she could have patented that cake recipe. And thereafter she could have either produced it herself, or she could have given somebody else a permission to bake her cakes. She could have sold a license to someone else to use that cake recipe. Like go to Sara Lee, or I don't know if Sara Lee's still in business, but go to a major bakery, and they would bake her cakes, and she'd get a few cents for every cake they sold. The other thing she could do is sell the recipe. So that's another example, and that's called assignment of her innovation. Well, I'm started out on this slide by discussing innovation and invention. Now, when I think of an inventor, and the two words, if you look them up, are practically the same, but when I think of the inventor, I think that the inventor embodies both the innovator and the entrepreneur. But you have to have both those things to get into the inventing business. And I've worked with a few of you here, and I know you know it takes that real spirit to go forward with something. Well, we have independent inventors and corporate inventors, and most of the marvelous technology that surrounds us comes from corporate inventors. They work within large companies in well-equipped laboratories. They do what their company asks them to develop, and they produce tremendous, wonderful things. But they're not at any personal risk to speak of, and the rewards that they get are going to be modest. I have to say that those corporate inventors would not have those nice laboratories or those big corporations to work in were it not for independent inventors. Independent inventors are the ones that plant the seeds. They're the ones that start to grow the corporations where the corporate inventors work. If you think about, and you can name many, many of our major industries, say AT&T or Microsoft, Ford, General Electric, Westinghouse, Apple, all of those industries were started by one or two people working in very humble circumstances with very limited funds. And they changed the landscape of the industrial world. Now, I say that because when we are here, I think, as independent inventors, not corporate inventors, and I think that when you are working on your idea, on your innovation, and you decide to commercialize it, have a lot of respect for your ideas, because you never know when you're onto an idea that's going to change the architecture of condominiums, or in your case, or some tools, but things that can go out and really make an impact on the world. And you're going to supply jobs and livelihoods for many other people. So I have a lot of respect for independent inventors, and this lecture series is dedicated to those independent and novice inventors. They are at a high risk, but they're possibly are going to receive a high reward. Well, inventing is a process, and it's a process that you can learn and you can follow. But there's no class in college that says invention number 101 or something. But you can learn it, and there are pretty well-defined steps to follow in the inventing process. If you follow them, you're going to have an increased possibility of success. If you ignore them, good luck to you. So why are human beings so passionate about inventing? I wanted to have you see this quote from Nikola Tesla. Tesla is arguably one of the greatest inventors of modern times. He, amongst other things, brought the alternating current to the commercialized alternating current, that powers all of our pumps and motors and tools, our houses and lamps and everything else. He said, I think there is not any thrill that can go through the human heart like that felt by the inventor as he sees some creation of the brain unfolding to success. Such emotions make a man forget food, sleep, friends, love, and everything. I can tell you that that is true. When I'm on the trail of an idea, I can't wait to get up in the morning and get back at it. And it's like a mental treasure hunt. You know you have something there. You're starting to pull a thread. You know there's a good idea coming out there. And boy, you just can't wait to go through the mental bushes and find it and dig out the best parts of it. It's a great thing to do. Well, this is kind of a complicated cartoon map here, and I'm going to lead you through it. But tonight, my lecture is going to be what I consider a very high altitude view of the journey from the initial concept, the initial idea, to the realization of the innovator's goal for that idea. And I couch it in terms of invention and the commercialization of that innovation. So I'm first going to run through this very quickly with you, and then go through it in just a little more detail. And then in the subsequent lectures, I'm going to go through segments of this route in great detail. It's a nasty route. It's filled with a lot of dangers and pitfalls and people who are out to cheat you and get you and discourage you. And the last paragraph here says it all. If you make it through, it's wonderful, but poor judgment anywhere along the way can lead to humiliation, financial ruin, and heartbreak, and people, your family, who perhaps do not understand your passion for sacrifice, both the financial and physical, will not be pleased with you if you fail. So I want to start up here at number 1. The route starts here, eventually winds up down here. And here you're in the process of deciding what it is you might invent. Now, I think if someone wants to be an inventor, you don't go sit in your easy chair and say, by God, I'm going to invent something. I wonder what that could be. Doesn't work that way. You could sit like that for years and you'd never come up with anything. What you got to do is look for a good problem that you can solve. And that's an easier task. So I recommend at the outset here that you start looking for things around you that bother you, that don't let you do what you want to do, or that you think could be made cheaper or better or easier to use. And just make a list of those things. And after your list has grown for a few months, pick out one of those things to go forward with. And so you've got the little guy here whose light bulb lights up, and he's chosen the one from his list to go forward with. So that gets you through the first gate. And I know some of you here are already inventors, and so you probably already have an idea in mind, and you already have, that's the key to opening the first gate. Along this segment of the path, you're going to advance the concept for your invention as far as you possibly can in your mind's eye. And don't forget, we're going to come back to all these segments of the path. Once you have done that and you have advanced it as far as you can through your own concentration, your own mental image, then you go on to another path segment where you evaluate the worth of that idea. And you say, is it commercializable? Is there a market for it? Can it be built? And so on. So I'll go through that with you. And I'm going to forget about this for the moment. And finally, we go down here. Once you have determined that you have an idea that has some commercial merit, that opens this gate. And you go through a variety of choices of ways to get down here to get your patent filed. We're going to talk about those briefly tonight. And finally, with your patent, you have a way to begin to have points to cash in on your ideas. So, by the way, this is a small audience tonight. I usually, if with a larger audience, would wait until the end of the talk to have questions. But because we are so few, I think I would just open it up, so anytime anybody has a question, unless we get too bogged down, just try to get my attention and I'll try to answer it for you. Okay, well, I'm going to go back and talk about the first part of the route once again. when you go about finding your good problem here to work on, make sure that it is something that is within your physical, mental, and financial capabilities to pursue. If you have an idea for a new valve for a locomotive engine, this is probably not a good place for the novice inventor to begin. I wouldn't say you should throw that out, but go to somebody who makes railroad cars and partner with them or something. So get something that you're thoroughly familiar with, you really know how it works, and in particular get something that you're passionate about, that you really can get excited about. Now, when you go through this area, as I explained, that you're going to mature it in your mind's eye, the first time you go through this route, I recommend a side trip here, and that's a trip to talk about mental imagery. We all have certain capabilities to visualize things within our mind's eyes, just as we all have, if we're lucky, have ocular vision with our actual eyes. And not everybody's ocular vision is the same. Some have blind, some have weak vision, some have excellent vision. The same, I believe, is true for mind's eye visualization. Some people have wonderful mind's eye visualization. Others simply cannot visualize anything in the mind's eye. There's been a lot of work done on this. I'm not going to go into it, but I will say the work that has been done that I have read about is not very definitive. So if you're lucky enough to have good mind's eye visualization, or no matter what level you have, I think you cannot do anything to improve that. There are no glasses that you can put on inside your head. But what I think you can do is improve the way you use the mind's eye talents that you already have. And so I recommend, and we'll go into this in a later, one of the later courses, but simple exercises to get you used to trying to see things in your mind's eye. I mean, you dream, right? Most people dream, and they see very vivid things in their dreams. And that's not really very voluntary. You can't decide what you're going to dream. Or we daydream, and we see things in a boring lecture, for instance. Your mind might be off having a wonderful sexual experience or something and not be paying any attention to me. But you can visualize that. Some people, other people can't. So anyhow, as an exercise, I'll give you two simple ones. One is imagine a rectangular sheet of paper, like a sheet of typing paper. And it's green on one side and red on the other. So just imagine that in your mind's eye. And try to visualize that floating around in front of you, and then bring it to a stop right in front of you. Okay, now fold the opposed corners together. And now see where the green and red are. And then fold it again and see where they are. And follow that. Or another exercise that I like is closer to home, is to visualize your home. See yourself walking up to the front door, turning the doorknob, you open the door, you go in to the entryway, try to visualize everything there. I say go into the living room, walk through to the dining room, visualize everything as you go. So you're bringing up in your mind's eye a thing that you're familiar with, that exists. Now, when you're in the dining room, I want you to rearrange the furniture. So now you're taking something you know, and you're changing it in your mind's eye. And that's what you do when you're working on an invention. You start out with the embodiment of it, the simplest in your mind, and then work it around. So you get to the point where you can, I mean, if you have the capability, natural capability, you get to the point where you can run assemblies, turn them on and off, make them go, and you can actually travel around inside them as if you were a spirit. And you can just move around inside your assemblies. So, now, once you have gotten to that point where you've done the best you can with your mind's eye, then go through some tests. And I'm running a little behind, so I'm not going to go into them in great detail, but try to evaluate the worth of your invention. Now, once you have done that, depending on where you want to go next, I think it's a good idea to file a provisional patent application here. It's possibly a good idea. We'll talk about the pros and cons of that in a later lecture. But that's something that you're going to learn about different sorts of patent applications. But a provisional application is something that is very readily filed, costs a couple $100 if you do it yourself, maybe $400 or $500 if you have a patent professional do it for you. And it's a very good upfront insurance that you have something tied down. And you can then use patent pending or whatever on your device. So the path goes on. I'll talk about this little thing here later in the next slide in more detail. But I want to come down here now, and I think I've covered everything here. So I'm going to go on and talk about this. One of the things that I want to mention to you in this next phase of the path is that there is a lot of support and opportunities available to you at this point, particularly if you have filed that provisional patent application. One is early stage funding. If you do not have the funds to go ahead with a patent application or something else, non-provisional or development funds or research funds, there's a possibility to get funds from the U.S. government. There is what's called, typically referred to as the SBIR program, Small Business Innovation Research Program. That is funded by the Small Business Administration. It's the best money that an inventor can get because it doesn't require you to dilute your ownership. If you get into this program, it's a staged program. In the third stage, first they let you develop your invention, pay you a salary, pay your employees a salary. They then allow you to take that invention and modify it into a market-ready product. And in the third stage, they provide a customer for the product. Can't beat it. So you should look into it. But it's not very easy to get. Still, there's a chance. And then there's a lot of local assistance available here at this point. We have small business development centers. There's one at Daytona State College. And wherever you are in the world, if you go to www.asbdc-us, I'm going to say .org, but .org, you can find that. I would make in your notes, this may be an error, it may be .gov. .gov. But anyhow, they're wonderful. They're free. They must help anybody that comes through their door that wants to start a business or wants to improve an ongoing business, needs help with a business plan, financial guidance. They can hook you up with the folks down in the last one here, the SCORE people. This is also sponsored an affiliate of the Small Business Administration, and it's an organization of retired professionals who are there just for free to help you with your programs. And then there are the business incubators. Again, there's one here in Daytona Beach. In fact, it joins the Embry-Riddle campus, and it's the University of Central Florida's small business incubator. All of these are wonderful. The incubators are not free, by the way, in general. Some are around the country, but most are not. But they're really wonderful, almost free or almost free aids available to you. You're checking them out, Madge. Oh. Does anybody have any questions to this point? Okay. Well, I want to go down now to the next portion of the path that gets you into some legal territory. And this is where you are going to think about protecting your invention. And you hear a lot of talk about intellectual property, and what is it? It's the unique products of your intellect. That's your intellectual product. It's unique, you thought of it, you came up with the recipe for the cake, it's yours. And if you protect it, it remains yours. If you don't protect it and somebody else learns about it, then it's yours and theirs. But how do you protect it? You protect it through patents, copyrights, and trade secrets. Copyrights I'm not going to discuss. They are more appropriate for non-material things, like if you write, like I've copyrighted these slides, for instance. It's things that you create, like music or a book. You write a book, you copyright it, and so on. And copywriting you can do simply by saying that it's copyrighted. You don't have to register it or anything. You get rights to it immediately. But the patents and trade secrets I am going to talk about, not in much detail tonight. But the patent, let me say, that we usually think about is called a utility patent, and that is a patent for a device that actually does something, that performs some function. And to get that utility patent, it has to be unique, it has to be non-obvious, and it has to perform some function. Those are the three criteria, not very strict criteria at all. And I oftentimes show examples of things that have gotten through and been patented. I'm not going to do that tonight, but those are the criteria. And trade secrets I explained to you in the context of the baking cake. So we are at this point. Here I recommend to anybody who wants to be an inventor to make a side trip to study patent fundamentals. And you go to www.uspto.gov. That's the United States Patent and Trademark Office's website. It's a wonderful, wonderful website. You know, our government in recent years, very recent years, has become much, much more friendly toward independent inventors, recognizing that they are the ones that are going to create the jobs and the technology for the future. So if you go there and you go to the Inventors Resources section, which is a tab on their website, you can find all kinds of information, including well-organized lectures on, more organized than this one is, on how to search patents, how the patent processing works, what the rules are, so on. And it's a very, very good thing to do. And I will go through this with you in a later lecture, but just to let you know at the moment that this is what it is. So you've armed yourself with a good knowledge of the patenting process and what the rules are. And when I do go through this, it's not to try to bring you up to speed with a patent attorney. No, I always advise people to go to a professional to get their patent work done. But what it will do is allow you to work more effectively with the patent professional, so that you bring a good idea of what the product is already to them. Now, once you have some knowledge, you can go through this gate, and now you have various ways to get down here to get your patent filed. You can go to a patent professional who will do a search and file your patent for you. You can be a damn fool and just go right down here and file it yourself. You can take this route here, which is another study opportunity, and one that I think is essential if you want to be an inventor. And that's learning how to search patents, learning how to find out what is out there in close art to what it is that you're inventing. So a wonderful website is a web service is available to do this now that was not available 10 years ago or maybe even about 5 years ago. But the Google has made an arrangement with the United States Patent and Trademark Office to make all of the patents in the USPTO database from 1790 up until the present available. So you go on that site and you put in the name of something, and you get a whole list of things that are relevant. And I'll teach you how to use that site in a later lecture. But I would recommend you go there and just play around with it yourself. It's a tremendous resource. And also, you can go back to the uspto.gov site, but that has all the information, but it's much, much more difficult to use. It's not as user-friendly yet. So once you know that, again, you're able to put your invention more in context of what is out there in your field. And so you're more educated to go forward. And when you do that, then you can go to the patent professional, or you can be not quite as foolish as you were here, but you can do it yourself. Or, well, those are the two, I guess, but the patent professional can do another search for you. I don't recommend that you rely on your own search when you file a patent. But again, you know pretty well what's out there, and you get your patent filed. So if you want to find a patent professional, and the two professions who can file a patent for you, one is a patent attorney and one is a patent agent. The agents are very good at writing patents, but they cannot do any legal work for you. They can't represent you in a court of law, and they shouldn't give you any legal advice at all. Some of them do. But I myself always work with a patent agent who is in a powerful intellectual property law firm. So he or she has the patent attorney to go back to, but who at about half the patent attorney's rate writes the patent, does a good job. If you want to find somebody as your patent professional, go back to the uspto.gov site, back to the Inventors Resources section, and then State Resources. And that gives you the name of all the patent attorneys and agents that are registered in your local area. And they in order to represent you with the patent office, they have to be on this registry. Well, I'm going down now to the last segment here about how to make maybe some money on your idea. Now, I've gotten you through the gate here on our route. One little guy standing here I didn't mention yet, and I see that I've excluded him from the circle, which is where he belongs. And that is the patent marketing and research firms. Once your patent application is filed, you get such wonderful letters from all over the states stating how great your patent is. It's the best thing since copper wire, and they need to get on it right away and do its research and get it to the market for you. I've had offers several times to fly to California to meet with them. They really woo you, but they're all crooks. No, they're really just there to screw you. Excuse my language, but that's. And I don't know that it may be in the world that there are some that are legitimate, but certainly the legitimate ones wouldn't be advertising in that manner. So you can check up on them a little bit by going to the USPTO site, and they list complaints in there against these organizations, and you can at least see how many complaints the one has had against them. And they disguise themselves very carefully. Anyhow, enough about them. The ways you can cash in, as I mentioned about the cake recipe, you can license it, which means you grant, let me back up and say think about your invention as your intellectual property. And an analogy is frequently made between intellectual property and real property, where your patent is the deed to your intellectual property, and its claims outline the boundaries of your intellectual property. So just as with a piece of real property, you can rent it out, which is equivalent to licensing your intellectual property, or you can sell it, which is the assignment of it to another entity, or you can start your own business with it. And as when you start your own business, you can either have it patented or go forward with a trade secret. It depends entirely upon the nature of your invention. So I think if you cashed in anywhere else along this route before you get down here to 18, you're likely to not get very much for your idea, and not as much as you could get by investing just a little more time and money in it. So, well, we will go into in a subsequent lecture this little side trip here, where we learn more about how to go about these various ways to cash in. But again, no time to do that yet tonight. But the first good opportunity to cash in is when you have a patent, either pending or better issued. Now, it takes typically now about 2 years from the time you apply for a patent until it gets issued. So that's it's a lot of time for an anxious inventor to sit and wait. So you can actually go forward with a patent that has been applied for. And I still haven't said whether this is a non-provisional or provisional patent application. You can still be going forward with your provisional application. You're safer, of course, if you have a non-provisional filed, but that's I won't worry about that right now. So here you've learned something about how to do it, and now you're at this first place here where you have your patent and you can license or sell or whatever that patent and get some money. But if you go a step further, you can spend not much more money and get more for your idea. So be careful here. You can, for instance, the example that I have used sometimes is if you invented a new whistling spout for a teapot. There's a concept involved there. The concept is that when the spout is on a teapot and the water boils, the spout should whistle. And it should whistle before the pot blows up. There should be a valve in there too, So that is your concept. You don't have to build a teapot to prove that concept. You can build some little whistles and things and see at what air pressure they whistle. So you can do a lot of things, but this is called proof of concept testing. So here you have your patent. Now you have your patent and you have some experimental proof that the principal concepts in your patent work. And you have data to show to a potential investor. So you have increased its value. The next thing, the next hurdle that you go through is to determine to define the product. Now, you may have a good idea for a product, let's say a can opener, a jar lid opener, and you could use that for your intended first use, which is to open jars. But maybe you, as you're thinking about this, you discover that it might work just as well for taking oil filters out of cars. And maybe the market for oil filters is bigger than the one for can openers. I don't know. But the idea is to define your market, your first market that you want to penetrate. And once you have identified that market and gotten some idea where your product fits into that market, you have completed this step here. You see the sack of money gets bigger as far as you go. And none of these things so far have cost you very much more than your patent. The next thing to do here does get expensive. And that is once you, well, depending on your invention, but for most inventions, it's an expensive thing. And that's qualifying your invention for the intended marketplace. So you have to put it through more rigorous tests to make sure it does what it's supposed to do, that it doesn't fall apart the second time you use it, and so on. So those are more costly tests. In the case of we have a gentleman here who's designing hurricane-proof condo. Proof of concept testing might be okay. Qualification testing for that is a big deal. That's going to be a big deal. But once you have done that, now you have a choice. You could sell out here and take your money, and so this you've spent probably $10,000 or $12,000 to get your patent. No, you spent maybe a few $1,000s more to prove the concept. You've spent a lot of brain power and shoe leather to define the market, and then you've spent considerably more maybe here to qualify it for that marketplace. But you're still fairly limited in your exposure. The next one is a big leap, and that is to set up manufacturing and sell the product yourself. That is a whole different game to play, and you need a lot more skills, a lot more diverse skills to do that than you do to get it to point 24. But that's where the big money is. It's also where the big risk is. This is the route that we'll take, and in subsequent lectures we'll go into all of these things in more detail. Now, you will need financing for your business at various points along here. I mentioned the SBIR program. I've always leaned on my family and friends. So, aside from the SBIR money, wherever you get your money, it's going to dilute your ownership. It's going to cost you something. But I would rather have that diluted ownership, the part that's diluted, go to my family and friends. And it's fun having them involved. And your mom or your Uncle Joe, they're going to be on you all the time, wanting to know how their investment's going. So it's a lot of fun. If you don't have any family or friends, sorry, but another thing you can do is partner with your vendors. Suppose you need a molding shop, for instance, to mold your parts, and you can't afford the molder. Well, you can partner with them, give them a piece of the action to do the molding for you. Or you can partner with a number of people. Even sometimes patent attorneys will partner with people. I've never had one want to do that, but I've heard that they do that sometimes. And then you get into the angel and venture capitalist investors. There's going to be an event here at Embry-Riddle in a few weeks, which is an innovation challenge where we're going to have a group of angel investors. It's like the Shark Tank thing that ours won't be like the Shark Tank, but but the angel investors are a good source of funds possibly as well. Sorry, this I've gone too fast. Now I'm going back. This group here, though, are going to cost you more than any other group for the money that you get. That's the route, and as you see, some of you heard me speak before. I like to finish these inspirational lectures with this patent for people who do not follow their dreams. I think of all the bad decisions that you can make, probably the worst one is to do nothing, and that unfortunately is what most people do. So. Now I have one other slide I want to show you, and then I will have finished. And This is a book I wrote 6 years ago, The Inventor's Pathfinder, and in true entrepreneurial spirit, I'm urging you not to buy it because it's outdated. Innovation has surpassed it. In 6 years, there have been a lot of changes in information retrieval. The patent laws have changed, very recently have changed. And so much as I'd like to see this get out in use, I'm writing a second edition of it to bring it up to date, and that will be out this summer sometime, I hope. That's it. So I'm open for questions.